Friends, family and keepers of the faith, welcome to another Del Boy blog, and as ever I'm going to date stamp this. It's year 4, blog 43. In legacy numbers it's blog number 199. My god, just that number makes me go, really? And it's dated the 14th of December 2025, and what does that date actually mean to me? Well, it's sort of like a build up to Christmas. Obviously, work is what we're going to do over the next couple of weeks, and where are we going to be in January, and all of that is future looking at. And I dare say that should be an empowerment, shouldn't it, really? I look out the window and it's calm, sunny but cold. Lots of rain, but we'll talk about sort of like the weather because it's been in the news this week. But Christmas, well, I'll probably talk a little bit about my thoughts of Christmas in a monologue later, but we'll get the news out the way, shall we? And as you know, I'm going to sort of like forget about the war, I think, especially after what I read in here. It doesn't fill me with any confidence for the future. And it states here, outrage is the first word, was in the article. Outrage after Moscow hits Turkish civilian ship carrying sunflower oil with a drone attack. Ukraine Navy says that the vessel had 11 Turkish civilians on board. They added that they were safe and now heading towards Egypt. The attack was on open sea, and so in breach of maritime law. This occurred while Trump and his top envoy, I think it's his son-in-law, I think it said, are preparing, should I say, peace talks with Zelensky in Berlin this weekend. So we all know that the war just continues as if nothing else is going on, even though peace talks are being planned. But a drone attack on a ship on open sea, I don't know if it's propaganda. I have no idea. All I know is that to pass an article like this requires lots and lots of checking. So I take it that this is true, and if so, yeah, all of this crossing borders by drones, now attacks on ships outside of war borderlines. Yeah, I just want the war to end. I'll leave it there. But I think you can see why I don't see my year 5 continuing along this line. It's just very poor and damning, and not in the spirit of this blog. The spirit of it was always for the war to end, and end early. And I will definitely report when the war is over and how happy I feel, and a little bit possibly on my thoughts of the whole damn thing, being as my blog started around that time. So yeah, so the UK news is equally pretty much as damning. So I mentioned a little bit about the storm that was coming. It's Storm Bram, and the articles were all in regards to Storm Bram causing major disruption to the southwest of England, and of course Scotland and Wales. And my thoughts were all of my friends that are in those areas. I've got a couple in Scotland, a few in Wales, and the southwest of England. Yeah, there's a couple there that I know of, and I just think to myself, wow, because I mean, even I felt the wind and the rain on my walks. I got totally soaked one day, wind causing me to take sort of, it was almost as strong as taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back. So, and I'm still, quite a heavy set person, although my health has deteriorated, and with that, has caused weight loss and a number of other things, but that's for another story for when I'm prepared to talk about that. So we'll end that there. And the other articles were equally as damning. Superflu strain hits the UK hard, with many hospitals encumbered. Now, this was an article that was literally on the radio that I was listening to when I was walking, and all over the news this week in regards to how hospitals are encumbered with beds in the aisles, but also from top medical people on Radio 5 this week that said it was a damning word to call it superflu, because superflu would indicate antibiotics not working to sort of like fix the flu epidemic, which is not true. It is a different strain. It is the strain has caused problems. There is a lower count in regards to flu vaccinations, even though there's been heavy advertisement. Although, to be quite honest, when they say heavy advertisement, I haven't seen any. It might be on the radio, it might be all over the internet, I don't know, but I haven't seen things that say, hey, do this, but I have received text messages to my phone, so maybe they think that is the heavy advertisement. But there was one article that scared me to death, and that was that there was a person that was operated on in the aisle next to a vending machine and bins, and people were getting their drinks and putting their dirt, or their dirty sort of like discarded cups next, into this bin, while a person was being operated on. Now, I take it the cleanliness was there, but my God, have we got to the point of that? I've heard of this before, especially around COVID, but also, through my years. I mean, I'm not a youngster anymore, and the NHS is something that I've always been very, very proud of. I remember during COVID us going out on a specific day and a specific time and clapping the NHS for all their work that they do. They didn't need that. They knew they were doing it, but I'm sure it was all welcome. And that's where I go. We're a proud nation, and we're proud people, and governments just, doesn't matter whether this government is saying, hey, we've brought back money to the NHS and we've done this and we've done that. Doesn't show. And, the telling and the showing are both important. I've tended to do that all my life. I've tried to show that I've listened and heard and done things. And I've definitely followed it up with a conversation. When it's required. I know that some people at work and in play will show and not say, and others will say and not show. It's a matter that I feel both are equal. If you only do one and not the other, then there's doubt. So that's my thoughts on the superflu bit. And this guy was very, very good at explaining what the issues are. And one of the other things that's going on at the moment is there's a 5-day doctor strike planned for next week, and it's sort of D-Day on Monday. There is a sort of like a plan or a proposal gone to the doctors. They want something like 30% pay rise or something like this. I do remember I listened to it on the radio but didn't read it in regards to the news articles. But Monday is whether the strike goes ahead or not. apparently people are losing interest in the doctor's plight. And you can understand that with a flu epidemic going on. So, it's one of those things. A good news story, or for some, but maybe not to others, is the King's message about his cancer health has touched many, and Cancer Screen website gets a surge in traffic, which means that's a good news. It puts more pressure, I take it, on the NHS. Cancer screening is very important. I must admit that I've had scares recently. Not something I've talked about or touched upon. I do need to, or should I say, I've booked in January my a prostate exam. That was on the basis, by the way, of my good friend Colin. He mentioned it, and I went, do you know what? It's probably a bloody good idea. I need to get other things that are not in my eyesight at the moment as something to do with other health issues all going on at the moment. So I decided, no, bugger it, I'll get that done. What is it? A minute of displeasure, days and weeks of dwelling on it. Do you know what I mean? And causing yourself stupid stress when you shouldn't need to. So, thank you, Colin, for that. Definitely something that's there. And the last one is River Island is to close 33 stores in a restructure, causing heavy job losses over the coming weeks. And I bring that one in just to show that stores as established as River Island leading up to Christmas are expecting a downturn. And, now you've got people that are facing job losses and not knowing what to do about Christmas presents and everything else. And you have to look at it and go, thank God you got a job. And then, think about these people that are facing these types of issues. And, you hope that they have the best time they can at Christmas. And my God, I'll be thinking, I hope that something turns around for them in the new year. It was funny, and I'll talk about it a little bit later on. In fact, it will be very shortly, because it goes into my week. What happened in my week? In fact, we'll do it now. So work. So work's been a bit of a weird week this week. I've been on what they call projects, and projects means that you're not concentrating on the reactional priority work, which is bulk uploads, site changes, all of that sort of stuff, which have to be done at the time that they come in. And asset and data management is where you're correcting data. And the projects is the lead into those two important things that we do as what they call a business as usual, to sort of like enhance it, make it more efficient, all of that sort of stuff. And if something like that is not happening, which when you head towards Christmas you have a downturn because contractors won't be working over Christmas, and contractors are big in the government sectors. So you then tend to find that what can you do, and you emphasize them things on work that is menial or training. And so there was a heavy emphasis on this particular spreadsheet that we've had for about 6 weeks now. Now, there are 1,600 devices on this list, for which I identified 3/4 of those. My colleagues did the same for the final quarter. And then it was a matter of going down it again and filling it in with some blanks of data. For again, I did 1,000 of them, so over half. And then the final part, which is the bit that we've all got to do, just like the other parts was all got to do. I've done 400 deletions, for which my colleagues have obviously done some, but not that many. And maybe that's because of care for my mother, and I totally accept that. Training is very difficult. Anybody that's ever done distant learning training knows that you have to be in the game. You have to be focused. And every time I try to put a bunch of effort into that, I'm drawn away on my mum. Not totally always in regards to things, like helping, get my mum up and down or anything, but there are phone calls and paperwork and all of that sort of stuff that come through on my phone that disturb me, and then there's my own brain and thinking going, what's going on? You know what I mean? I can't see it. I don't know what's going on. I know that my mother's in good hands, but that doesn't take away from the fact that something else that I would casually observe might be something that's not picked up. So it's like that. When you're a carer, you're constantly on edge, constantly on sort of like 999 alert. You know what I mean? Anybody that's looking at this abroad, 999's our emergency number. So, it's a horrible thing to talk about, but that's sort of why training is so difficult. But it was also at a time where we'd booked last week a Christmas fun hour, right? It was, hey, what can we do as a team that would just take us away from our work for an hour and get into the Christmas mood, which is very difficult for me. I mean, I haven't been in a Christmas mood for a decade or more, probably 2, thinking about it. But those are for different reasons. And I get sort of Christmassy when I get very, very close to Christmas, when you have to go out and get the Christmas meat, and you have to go to the bank and get your interest money from your savings and buy Christmas presents, which is what happens for me. It's always been, ever since I lived in Manchester, that Christmas was the worst time because I was miles away from my mum and dad, and presents were being delivered by post, which sometimes wouldn't get there. I wouldn't be there because I'd be at work, and so they'd be returned to a post office sorting office, which I had no idea where it was, and all sorts of headaches like that. And Christmas Day would be a phone call, but it's equally bad when I was here, because Christmas was a time where relations would turn up, and if you have a disagreement or a problem with family, then you tended to become a hermit. You'd stay in your room, but I'll talk about that a little bit later on. But that's why Christmas has sort of been like it has been for me. And some of those things creep in to work. So on Wednesday we had this quiz. Everybody was wearing Christmas jumpers. I don't have a Christmas jumper. I've never bought one, never needed one. My mother's never bought me one, and we've never had guests that have turned up to dinner that have required you to have a Christmas hat on and all of this sort of stuff. When since my dad died, we kept Christmas as a time where we made the second living room. We got the table out, put the tablecloth out, put the food on the table, all of that sort of stuff, and we ate together and talked about presents and the Christmas and what it was for us, remembering my father. And I sort of stayed away from the visits. I would be in my room or helping a little bit with the Christmas food getting, and when guests turned up, they would see my mum, and I would stay in my room. But again, that's about me. So this had a Christmas quiz, for which I won. Now that should be encouragement, but I think it was one of those ones where 2 of the 4 sections were film and music, and the music was Christmas based. So it was all about, you know, like what's the biggest selling record, you know, for Christmas, and you know, some, you know, you're going to get a 1 or 2 choice of this, aren't you? You're going to get Band-Aid, or you're going to get White Christmas by Bing Crosby, aren't you? So you even if you know sort of like next to nothing, that's going to be pretty much known. Do you know what I mean? And then it's like, who wrote the music for Do They Know It's Christmas? You know, and how are you not going to know that Bob Geldof wasn't involved in that, or, you know, and in this case, Midger. But, you know, it's like, who sang the first line of that? It was music. It was, you know, 10, 15 questions of that sort of stuff. And, you know, if the older they are, the better I've got a chance, because I won't know modern stuff. And anything sort of like around Britain's Got Talent or Pop Idol or anything like that, which went, you know, all of those records that came out for the winner that were Christmas number ones. I don't know too much. I don't know too much because I was never interested in those. And apart from one particular artist got, this is my winner's song. You know, all the others were things like Hallelujah or something like that. I think it's because they recognise that you have to have a sort of Christmas element to this, not just a winner's song. You know what I mean? But yeah, so the quiz came and went, and we had to tell a tale of our sort of like a Christmas joke, best Christmas present, that sort of thing. So I can't remember what the joke was. Did I say? I said, I bet somebody's going to come out with that god-awful Star Wars one, you know, like Darth Vader saying, I can feel your presence, you know, or something like that. No, I know what you, that was it. I know what you got for Christmas. And he kept going, what is it? What do you mean? You know what I got for Christmas? I know what you got for Christmas. And then it's, I felt your presence is the punchline. Crap joke. But then again, I had all Christmas ones. I think the one I gave out was, what disease do you get from eating Christmas decorations? That was it. And the answer was tinselitis. Now, you know, don't shout at it and go, oh, Jesus, what a dad joke. But, you know, at the end of the day, you're on the cusp of having to think of a joke, and that's the one that came out. I think somebody came out with the difference between a snowman and a snow woman, which is snowballs. I mean, equally as bad as mine, isn't it? I mean, so I didn't feel bad, and I felt, well, I was in good company with that. But this happened on the day that my laptop was being swapped out. Now, it was going to be on the day after, but they moved it. So I could have missed it. And would that have been a good thing? Would that have been a bad thing? You have to think to yourself, if I'm not in the Christmas mood, maybe that was a good thing. And maybe that was one of the reasons why it was moved to that Wednesday. I have no idea. But the laptop swap actually happened after the event and caused disruption for the rest of the week. Now, it needed updates. Then it needed my profile downloading. And then it needed, you know, me to go through and make sure that, you know, certain stuff was present. But of course, you can't. They tell you in the swap, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this. And I followed it 100%. And 4 years ago, I'd have been writing out the same thing. But my mind would have been attuned to oh, test this. And it wasn't. So sort of Wednesday came and went. It did two hours of updates. When I turned the machine on Thursday, it did more updates. But those updates could go on while I was working, so that's great. But of course, it did interrupt. Every time I opened up all my windows to do a job, it would say, you need to reboot now. And therefore, the time that you spent opening all that stuff, which is a good, I'd say about 15 minutes, instantly closed down, and then you start that whole 15-minute process again. And it did that 3 times on Thursday. 3 times. And I had to log a call because the one thing that I noticed was my drive letters. I've got part of the 2P process that I had 4 years ago was the ability to be able to go to the servers that contained the data that was salvaged. In other words, for historical reference. And 2 of those drives were missing. And I couldn't take this laptop that a DPD guy delivered back with me without giving him my old laptop. So I have no idea what those 2 drive letters are. But luckily this happened 1.5 years ago, and I was able to search my old emails, and I found an incident number, and I gave that to the person, and they worked on it. So Friday comes along. And on Friday, I got my call in the morning, and they put the 2 addresses in for the drive letters, and they opened, but I haven't tested to make sure that that was the only ones. We only had a screenshot of what my drive looked like back 1.5 years ago to go on, and there could have been a 3rd drive letter, and therefore that could be one of the most important ones. Or maybe that drive letter didn't go away 1.5 years ago, but has gone now, which means that there would have been nothing in the call to say about the address lines for these 2 mappings. So, yeah, that needs to be looked at. And I said to myself, I need to get some training in. I'm in the following week. I've got some time off because I can't do the Christmas week. Yeah. That was another story that you'll see in a previous blog. So in those times next week, I'll be doing some Christmas stuff that I've got to prep, all around the house, plus shopping and stuff like that. So, and of course I'll be visiting the grave of my dad in that time, because historically I've gone to Christmas Eve, and that won't happen this year. I've always done that. When I say always, there's been obviously a year or 2 that I haven't, but I've gone up there to talk to my dad, and I think I need that more than ever, to be quite honest, with things that have gone on this year with my mum and how family are. So yeah, that's going to be something that I'll be dwelling on a little bit. But just to talk about work again, I'd booked the afternoon to do some training, and lo and behold, my manager turned up and said, can you look after this mailbox? Which I thought, oh, for goodness sake, I just pinned my hopes on putting it there. And when I went to the mailbox, I found I didn't have ownership of it anymore. So that took another hour of my time to be able to look for 3 emails that were there eventually that he wanted me to look at. I dare say he thought it was just something that I could do and keep work going, but maybe a manager should think about all the disruption that the laptop caused, because I mentioned it in our team briefs that the laptop wasn't going well. Nice bit of water there, sorry. And, me as a IT asset and configuration manager back 4 years ago would have been something that I would have even informed the service desk that any call that comes through from a person with a laptop, expect disruption. And this is a project, so I know that's going on. But local managers, they look at the numbers. You know, they don't probably think about disruption. So again, I hope that we've got a learning curve going on at the moment, and that that's going to be addressed. Do you see what I mean? Now, when it comes to my mum's care and me, it's sort of like mixed with this. Communication, again, is the major hurdle. All I will say about it is that nothing is bad is going on for my mum. My mum's in pretty good health, and I'll explain what I mean by that. We've noticed, both my sister and I, that my mother is now still saying can't and no an awful lot, getting her out of bed, but the knee situation is she's moving them by herself without us touching them as much, and she can almost get herself out of bed, although she still needs a lot of prompting to do that. And you know, all of those are great signs. And of course the 16th, which is Tuesday, is a D-Day moment, because that's when she gets her injections. But you know, it's tinged with a lot of things where if there are communication issues, and I always put my hands up and say I'm as much as fault as anything. But if you can't make inroads to those, and that's what's happening at the moment, we stay away from each other, then of course it's frosty at best. And that comes from both sides. And that's why I'm saying there's no winning, losing. This is all as it is. And there's very little. I've tried to make some small inroads. I mentioned to my sister that I'd like her input on the Christmas decorations this year. But there's very little from the other side, and I have to understand that, hey, it is what it is. But should it be is what it is? That's the argument, right? No, it shouldn't be, right? Christmas is a time where you need to put these things to one side. They should be thinking of the new year and moving forward and all of this sort of stuff. And I see very little of that. Very little of that. And I don't see that changing too much. But when it comes to care for my mother, the only negative that I've seen is that I am in a position in the evening to gauge whether my mother needs a wheelchair to go to bed, or whether she can practice walking. And I've always given my mother the option, and she always says, no, I'm going to walk, and all of this sort of stuff. And I go, well, look, Mum, I've got to be very gingerly with you here. At certain points, there are nowhere for you to sit down, which means that you've got to keep going forward. I'll always be here. I'll never let you fall. But that's the problem. And she goes, oh, I'm going to walk. And I go, okay. And that's the point where I know that my mother is walking and things are improving. And all of this is explained to my sister, and she's all smiles about it, and it's absolutely wonderful, because that's what we want for my mum. And this is where we're both great carers. But when she sits down and she needs to take her tablets, we've noticed her do this an awful lot, and it happens before all of this, is that she put her hands to her eye, scratch her head, and she'll say, I feel funny. But she can't put the words into what that means. So I mentioned this to my sister on Saturday, because I asked her outright, have you noticed anything during the day? For which she said no. And I said, right, well, I'm going to tell you what I've noticed the last couple of days, and I will let you know if this happens again. Is that on one of the days she said that she felt something in her head and moved her hand to her eye, and it happened again the following day, and that's why I'm bringing it to her attention now. Please observe it. And I think my sister took that, But it didn't happen on the next day. And my mother is in good spirits when she goes to bed. I say the same thing to her when she goes to bed every night, which is, I love you, Mum. I love you more than anything, and I want you to be around forever. That's what I always say to her, and she says thank you. Bless her. And she then says she loves me. And even this week, this is the thing. On Friday night, I think it was, she said, can you sit there and watch the darts with me because I miss you? And it almost brings a tear to your eye a little bit, and I might take a break in a moment because I'm thinking of that now. And you know, it's why I want my sister and I to get on more than we do, but it's just not happening at the moment. But I'm going to say outright something that I've talked about a little bit already before. Now, my sister and I didn't speak to each other for 25 plus years, right? And this is always going to be a problem. Recent arguments don't make sense in when they're brought up into an argument in regards to what they've seen. But the more I've looked back at my time at that, the more I've understood it a little bit more. I've mentioned it before that because of this, and because my sister would sometimes visit, she says that she turned up at least once a week, every week, and I know that that's not true because I was off for a whole year as a grievance, and I've got a diary on that, and I've looked, and there, you know, I've written down stuff that's mentioned, and I've always gone up to my mum, oh, had any visits, Mum, any visit from Tracy, whatever, and she'd say no, and my mum didn't have dementia then, so that's a foregone conclusion, right? And I understand it, because when you're bringing in something into an argument, you bring in something that you talk literally about when actually you can't literally say that, because there were weeks, do you know what I mean, where that's not true. And that's where you go, do you know, let that drop. It's not something to mention. So, you know, mention in an argument or whatever, because it's a non-thing. But what I'm trying to get at here is that whenever, and I knew when my sister would turn up, because I can hear the door, right? I can hear the front door as it resonates through the bricks, this house. I know when people would turn up, and I'd give them the time to look at my mum, and I thought that if anybody wants to see to me, they'd knock on my door. And for pretty much all of the time from 2005 to now, that's how it was. And it's almost like that time in my early years where I was invited to parties and I'd try and interact, but the interaction was never there. It was a nervousness. It was I don't want to ruin the party mood. I ended up being the person that would be at the corner of the room having a drink, watching people dance, all of that sort of stuff. The same sort of people that went to nightclubs by themselves, went up there just to look to see if their friends were up there, and if they weren't, then they'd have a pint and wonder, should I go home, whatever, or maybe I'll meet a new friend, and you'd stay, and then the night would come and the slow music would start and you'd walk away and you get your kebab or whatever and go home. All of that sort of stuff is similar to what was going on in my room in here. It was, if I keep away, then I'm keeping the joy going. I don't want to be the party pooper. I don't want to be the person with the solemn face. And I thought I was doing a good thing. But what's happened with that is it's turned into a bad thing, because it's turned a person introvert. That's the word, introvert. And yeah, so Christmases have been a time where I've helped, you know, with my mum a little bit. I stayed with her for a little bit, but most of the time I was in my room, I was on my computer, and I'd be playing a computer game, anything that would take my mind off of it. And the evening would be watching Christmas with my mum and watching telly, which was shit, to be quite honest. It wasn't like the 70s and the early 80s. So, you know, even my mum would say, what's this shit that we're watching? You know, it's not Morecambe and Wise, it's not the two Ronnies, it's not, you know, it was all reality crap. So I kept away. And the more you keep away and the more you get introvert, the more you get probably a bit of resentment. So if I had an argument in another area of the house, like the kitchen, it's because the person that I've got a problem with would be there, and it would cause an issue. Do you see what I mean? And therefore, what the person that looks at it from a distance is not understanding is the thoughts that are going on with me. And they look at it that I'm just a nasty person who's just said a nasty thing or something, when they don't know whether there was an argument before it or whether something was going on that my dad didn't like or my mum didn't like, and we, kept away from each other. But my dad would always come in. I always remember this. He'd come in after 3 days and say, "I've noticed you stayed in your room an awful lot. Is it because of the argument?" And I'd say, "Yeah, it is." And he'd say, "Well, no, I don't. You've kept away. We don't know what you're talking about. But if I said something or anything, I apologise for it now, because all I want is the best for you." And this is the power of my dad. This is the power of my dad, where he would turn around and say, "I recognise I've not been helpful here, and I recognise that you need to have a chat with someone, and you being out here resolves nothing. When it comes to, if it was an argument with my mum, I've had a word with your mum. She doesn't understand. Can you come out?" And I'd speak to my mum, and my mum would go, "Oh, don't be silly." And that'd be the end of it. Now, those are the things where, when your mum's not in the right state now and your dad has gone, you don't have that, and you've now got two people that are not talking to each other, and there you go. So what does Christmas mean to me at the moment? Well, with everything that's going on, I think to myself, pure dread. Is the person that's threatened me going to be turning up at Christmas? Is my sister going to be here for 8 hours when there's no need for her to be? Because I'm as much a carer as she is. And if I felt that there was a problem, then she could be here. But also I have to understand, hey, this might be the last time for my sister to be around my mum. But it interferes with things, because I've always got a problem with eating in front of people. Now, I've ate in front of my mum for years, right? But do I want my sister there when I'm eating? No. I'm conscious because I was fat, and I was picked on fun at when I was eating. And so, do I want to spend my whole Christmas in my room because my sister's there? All of those things, they're not going to be on the level that my sister's going to understand, and we can't talk for me to explain that. And like I say, I'm so blessed that I can do a blog like this to vent, because who's to vent to? It's one of those things where there's nothing nasty going on here. There's nothing that's pointing fingers or anything, because there is nothing nasty between my sister and I in anything that I just said. These are things that have gone on for years and years, and I'm as much to blame for them as anybody else is. And I look at myself and going, you could have handled that better. So I'm just letting you know that Christmas to me is a bust, and the time that I want to spend with my mum is being drained away because of resentment. That's pretty much it. And I sometimes have those resentful thoughts that says, sister doesn't care as long as she's all right. And I always naturally think and go, my sister's not like that. No, she's not. It's just she's having the biggest problem of seeing my mum degrade for a long period of time where I'm at work. So I'm blessed there. And then she's got an issue with me that she doesn't want. And then those things turn into, do I care about that? No, because it's all about the importance of mum. And you see what I mean? It's not a nasty thing at all. It's totally understandable. But it does mean that I've been living in this room again for a week, and it's taken me back to memories of 25 years of doing exactly the same thing. Only this time, the time that I missed with my dad because of work is happening again. Only this time because of an argument. And it's not right. And that's the end of that. And I want everybody to know that everything to do with care for my mum is 190%. And I tell you what, 200 from my sister. I can't say any more than that. And these problems, I've made the inroads that I can. Hopefully they'll come from my sister. And I might have to play that card closer to the time. I'm dreading my 3 days holiday because work isn't going to be there, and it'll be a normal day for my sister. But I'm looking forward to those 3 days because it'll be after my mum's injections of steroids into her knee. I've already cleared the room to put the Christmas tree up. I've told my sister earlier in the week I'd love your input. Maybe these things will turn a frosty situation a little bit more melting of the ice. I can hope. But the one thing I will know, that I know, is that I love my sister, and I'll continue to always be that way, regardless of what she says. And I will maybe even do silly little things like put a little box under the tree that says, Merry Christmas from Mum or something, because Mum can't go shopping or get a Christmas present. And, I'll spend my money on that, because there's, the money issue is never going to go away, and no matter what. So I have to address that. I've got no money. I've got very little, and only that interest money from the building society is going to get me through a very dodgy time, so there you go. There you have it. So that's the end of that. And that's my thoughts. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a break because, speaking about my dad has left me a bit emotional. Making sure that you understand that these things are me, not my sister, I hope has come across. I try to keep away from that as much as possible, because my sister's a good person, and I see that in her, but it's buried, and that's something to work on, isn't it? That we both work on. So I'll be back in a moment, and we'll get on to the fun stuff, and I'll put my mindset into that. So back in a moment. There we go. Sorry, I was away for quite a bit of time, actually, thinking about a lot of things that I'd said, and I hope it came across that it was all me. It's not about anybody else, because it isn't. This blog has always been about what's going on and me. Sometimes there is cause and effect, but it's all me, and that's why you should never think anything other than this is a blog from my mind and my memories and my mouth, and that's how it always should be looked at. And I haven't given any negative really on this other than myself. I'll talk a little bit about it maybe another time, but it is true that loneliness does have an effect, and over a big long period of time it can really affect you, but I recognize it. That's the thing, and that's what you have to understand. If you don't recognize it, then of course it can be worse. So as long as I realise that, that's the thing. I've always been a generous person. I've always been a person that tries to talk things out. I only ever have a blocker if the person doesn't want to talk, because then you dwell, and that's what you have to avoid. Dwell. If there was anything that came away from my monologue, don't dwell. Try to remove the blockers, but recognize, don't try and change free will. But sometimes the actions can help, but you definitely need both. And if a person doesn't recognize those traits, then it just gets worse. And then you have to look at it as going, well, it's not the other person's fault. I've always turned around and said, if a person only sees something, then they're going to have a perception. That's the word. So anyway, moving away from all that horrible nonsense, because it's all me, let's move out to the good stuff, which is the shout-outs. And there's been many to talk about here, and everybody that's been watching, and the numbers have been going up. It's absolutely great. Thank you. But these particular people have left a comment, and I always read them out, and all the comments. So they are Rocket Bunny, Ian Hill The Ramblings, Colin Jones aka Ponder, Wee Bob Art, Steve's Gaming Part 2, Carl Todd, Martroid, a new one, Floyd 1611. Thank you very much. I actually thanked that person. Jambon and Robert's Retro Gaming. You'll notice the Stowerport ones are the ones that are always writing a comment. Some of the ones that that are very big on me have got problems with flu and parents and all that sort of stuff, and working long shifts. I think of them all the time, and all I know is that there's a couple of exciting things that will be coming up, and every Wednesday I do something with my friend Ian Hill The Ramblings live, and Christmas Eve is a Wednesday this year, so that's going to be very interesting, and one that will distract me a little bit maybe. So you might find that my mum going to bed will be a little bit longer, but my mother does have dementia, so it's not going to be that big a thing, but I will be cooking the meal, defrosting, all of that sort of stuff, and I'll be at work that day, which is another headache. So that'll all be on me again, but there should be, and it was arranged 2 weeks ago, what particular day we're doing the Christmas extravaganza. You'll see a post that will talk about that. That will be at the weekend. And of course, we then move to the new year. And of course, again, New Year's Eve is a Wednesday. So again, some disruption there. But I know that for a fact that my mother never wanted to see the new year in. She always went to bed about 11 and said, wake me, I'll wake up when it's all over. What? Let's forget about last year. Let's move on to the new year. And that's how it was last year. So I'll probably try and, if I can, watch as much of my friends' videos as possible around that time. I'm a big supporter and try and talk, but it will be different this year. It will be. So let's go on to the first comment that's here, and they're not in any particular order. So the top one is, that I'm reading down through a list, by the way, is Jambon. And he's put, "Hi Del, we've had visitors this week and I never managed to get to the end of your vlog. Sorry, but hope you are doing okay and surviving December, and all the best to your mum." And no, that's a perfect line of a comment and explains an awful lot about other people. You got to remember that other people have got lives, and I'm sure I'm going to be speaking to Jambon before Christmas, in regards to a text or something through Discord or whatever, or it will be happening, because you always think of your friends as well as yourself during this period, and I always will do that. So moving on, I think it was probably going to be a similar message. It's from Robert's Retro Gaming, and if you haven't recognised by now, he has a channel, and I watch it every week and everything that he puts out. I don't say that I understand it all, because there's certain games there that he plays that I just go, what? I have no idea where you are in this anymore. Dwarf Fortress, I think, is one of the games that's like that. But I managed to get through 10 or 20 minutes of a big, long hour episode of that and try and understand it. And I played that game for a very brief time when it first came out, when it was mostly ASCII characters from my memory, and it's changed now for the better, and I really should get into it, but I know it's sat my time, Jesus, and I won't understand what the hell's going on. It's hard enough for me to go back to a game. Actually, somebody mentioned it in Ian Hill, the Ramblings, thing about Age of Empires. They swallow time, and you got to remember the mechanism that it was that drove the game. Have I got the time to remember the mechanism? And then by the time I have I got the time to put the hours in to beat the game? Which I know full well is a no to both. So those things are again taken away from me a little bit. And it's difficult, So what's Robert got to say? He's put, "Hi Del, I'm late to the party. I did not watch this week. It's understood. I've just finished performing in a choir concert." Wow. See, when you got a family, you got to remember that they go to Christmas pageants and stuff. That was reminded to me when my cousin and my aunt turned up, and they said, oh, they're getting ready for the little one to be in a Christmas pageant. And I said, wow. Yeah, the last time I remember doing something like that, I went back to my primary school to see my old school teacher, Mr. Arnold. And I turned up in my 20s. And he was talking about Christmas then. He said it was lovely to see me. He wanted to know how I was getting on. And I told him I'd just got a job at the bank, Lloyd's Bank at the time. And he said, wow, I never would have thought that of you. And well done. It's such nice to know that an old pupil of mine has gone into something that I wouldn't have thought would have ever happened with my knowledge of you with maths. And I went, yeah, it's amazing. And I said, I know, it's brilliant. And you were such a big influence on me. And I thanked him for it. And I helped on that day, helping with the stage. And it brought back all of the wings, the wings where of the stage, where I sort of like helped out with some painting duties and got some items from I think it was a storeroom that I remember going into, and in there was a lot of tinsel and all sorts of stuff. And each time I'd have to walk past the hall that took you into the stage, and I saw all the kids' paintings on the walls. It was a magical time, really. And again, it filled me with, oh, I don't have that in my life. I don't have a wife or a kiddie or any of that. And I've missed that for 20, 30 years of my life. Yeah. So it always a bit of tinge of pathos with these things, isn't there? But anyway, I digress a little bit. He's performing in a choir concert, which on top of other normal activities has kept me quite busy this week. I will watch and listen to a bit of this one on a sleep timer now. I don't know whether he means he's reading it to go to sleep or listening to it, but hey, whatever rocks your boat, matey. He says, I'm looking forward to listening to the next one tomorrow, and all the best. And that's such a nice thing to end on, and totally understandable. I mean, I know you've got a couple of kids and you've got a wife, and you've moved in, you've had a renovation done at your house this year, and it must be really exciting time for you, and filling it in with one of your grown-up kids moving away, which you said about a couple of blogs ago now, I remember. It must be so difficult. So explaining away to me, don't worry about it, mate. You just keep doing those great YouTube videos, which I watch every morning, and listen to while I'm doing my work. Usually before my sister arrives. It's in that 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. block, if you see what I mean, where I've got my mum settled with a tablet, and I got to catch up with time at work. So I listen to you then. So brilliant. Thank you so much. And I'm sure I'll be saying Merry Christmas next week, so I won't say it now. So we'll move on to Rocket Bunny. Yeah. And you'll notice this is in a different order to what I read the shout outs at, so it shows you it's not in any particular order. And it says, "Hi Del, I hope you and your mum have had a quiet week and are as well as can be." Yeah, and it has been quiet, I will say that. "Enjoyed the blog while building away in Planet Crafter." Yes, we've been playing Planet Crafter, or should I say, I've tried to. We last played last Sunday. And that was before I went to bed. And wow, what a game! I mean, this downloadable content of an expansion called Toxicity really is a change. It's like that old familiar what you played last year, but in a new environment and a new mechanic and a new story. So I remember when we came in last Sunday, the first thing I said to him was, "Oh, wow, you've done a great thing here. Absolutely marvellous. It's great." And he said he'd love it if we could both now move on and go on this sort of like train that we found a couple of gameplay befores. And I said, "Oh, absolutely." My thoughts in those games that we played, which was only for about an hour or so, or two tops, was this did not seem like the main area that we need to be in, and that we were building a base in an area that I thought was not what we should be doing and that we should be exploring more. He agreed. He went, "Oh, absolutely, let's get on this train." And I said, "Well, we'll need a kit, won't we? We'll need to put in the containers stuff like that we think might not be there, something that we need urgently, and one of those things is food and water." And this is where you think, yes, this is a survival game. If you run out of oxygen, you die. If you don't drink, you die. If you don't have food, you die. And all of those things, you think, well, if I'm going into a new area, I need to know that I've got enough oxygen, water and food, because what am I going to see when we go on this train and where it ends up? And you're going, wow, this is such a deep game. It's great. And we got on the train. We took a load of iron and silicon and some things that we thought might be scarce, like aluminium and iridium and uridium and radiation stuff and plastic. And we put that on the train, and then we carried whatever we could of the rest, which is food and water and all that. And we got on the train and moved over to another area, and wow, was it different. And it's so expansive. We went, yeah, the bastards, these programmers, they've made us think that that was the main area, and it wasn't. And we'd spent too much time there, and now we got to start again. And we looked for an area that was flat, and I said, from a distance, this is my thoughts, from a distance I could see water. And then what's the one thing that you're going to need, right? Once you get rid of this toxicity, you're going to need water. So we ought to build close to land, and there was a pool to the left and there was a pool to the right. If you imagine you're on this big sort of bugger off bridge, right? I'm trying to put that bridge. You're at the top there and you're looking down, and you can see across the whole of the landscape, left to right, because this train was damaged going forward. And I said, there's a water thing over there. Let's go over there. So we flew off of this bridge, full of toxicity. And we got to a point where, yeah, we're going to die soon because the radiation, we got to clear the toxicity. And we found a flat area of water. And we built our base there, got some oxygen in. That was great. Then we started to build some canisters to put our stuff in. And then we went around clearing up some of the toxicity, which then meant that we weren't going to be burnt by radiation. Marvellous. And that's pretty much what happened until the last half hour, where we needed to pull stuff from the last place we were at and bring it over. And I asked him, what do you think is the most urgent thing that we need? And I decided I'd leave him building, because he loves that, and constructing our home. And I went off and pulled things back, and I kept filling up the train with its canister that it's got on there with stuff, and I filled up my whole backpack with as much as I could do. And I took several trips back and forth and had to leave it there. And I know that we've got to get rid of the toxicity in the water. That's the first thing that's got to be done. And then we've got to explore more, because the resources, we can't keep going back and forth to the starter base. It would take days to do that. So that's where we left it. So it was marvellous. Really loved that. So that's that bit. And then he put, I finished the Humble Planet. That's the that was the first expansion that came out. And I've gone back to my Prime, that's the first game, which is what I finished, save, to unlock a lot of new stuff in that. I didn't realise that you can go to all the expansion planets in the solar system in one playthrough. So now I'm wondering, is it best to do these with all the gear unlocks, or start them fresh in separate saves? I usually like the fresh start aspect in survival games, but it's tempting to be able to fly around the solar system in one save. Any thought on your saves? Well, to be quite honest, that sounds absolutely marvellous. It would require an awful lot of time, and it would require me starting again in Prime. And that is such a enticing thing, but one that possibly would never happen, just because of my mum and Christmas and everything else. But I tell you what, over Christmas, that's something I could do. But for us, continuing how you are with that one save is the thing I look forward to. But as a play it in one work through all of that, yes, what a marvellous thing. You'd blast off from your planet and you'd land on the next one, and you'd have all the unlocks done and all of that. Marvellous. Although I've always thought that you couldn't do that in Prime, could you? And in Humble, which is the second one, I'm wondering if you can only do it now since toxicity, because I do remember seeing, when it was released, one video, and the person landed on there after he said he'd completed the game, starting again. So he didn't have all the unlocks. So yeah, interesting. But anyway, we're dwelling on that far too much. It's probably boring everybody. So thanks for answering my Stones question. Yeah, that's the Doctor Who story from last week. Stones of Blood, which was filmed around the Roll Right Stones, which is around here. Very impressive. You went to the Stones during the actual filming. Amazing experience. And it was. Really was. It's the one thing that I can actually say. Doctor Who probably has filmed around here an awful lot, but in my childhood I only know of that one. Quarries and everything are all in Wales and south. They didn't travel very far up north from what I know. But there you go. My ears picked up when you were talking about Iridium. Was I talking about Iridium? Don't remember that. Playing it on my school friend's Commodore 64 while I had my Specky was like playing an arcade game in comparison at home. It blew me away and made me want to move on to the Commodore 64. Galway's Morse code loading music on Rambo also kickstarted my interest in electronic music. So many people have got their own way of discovering things, and I remember, yeah, that was a big thing. And my discovery was through natural progression, but electronic was there well before the Commodore 64. Usually around the time of The Shining and Wendy Carlos, yeah, and a Beethoven album, which I only heard at the time and didn't own the album. It was probably because of all the episodes of Micro Live I listened to with Kraftwerk music and all of that got me into electronic. But I was heavily into electronic stuff anyway. So the more I listened to those weird sounds that came out of Moogs, the more I got addicted. So yeah, and I was listening for those in orchestral type music as well, which was my second passion. So yeah, good. You carry on. Good to see another friend moving on from fizzy drinks to water. Yeah, here we go. Look, this is the water. If I don't have a cup of tea, I always have a pint of tap water to the side, whether working or gaming. Never been a fizzy water fan though, as it always reminds me of the unflavoured carbonated water we made using the soda stream back in the day. I can understand that. And it was going to be one of the biggest hurdles that I had, but I had to make a change. I mentioned it before, I was drinking 6, 7, 8 cans of Diet Coke. I always had a water at the end of the night and the beginning of the day. Tablets, you see. But yeah, fizzy water is something that my sister suggested to me, and good on her. I mean, this is what I'm saying. There have been some really happy times and some very good advice, and she's my elder sister, so I listen. So it's great. Have you upgraded your Guild Wars 1 installer to the remaster? At first I didn't notice the difference, but I tried the controller support, which is surprisingly good. Graphics in 4K also seem smoother than before. I will tell you now that I have opened up my Guild Wars 1 launcher. It downloaded all of the stuff, it loaded up my stuff, I opened it up, my save, it put me directly, I think, in Lion's Arch. I haven't started again. It literally was a 10-minute walk around to see what was different. I never tried the controller, I should have done, and I haven't been back since. But it was only the 3rd of December, so I've done, a little bit. But anybody that's listening to this, if you want something that you want to put your hours on into, and something that you might enjoy, I'm not saying you would, Guild Wars 1, if you've got it, you've got the reforged version. If you haven't got it, it's $19, I think about £15 in Steam, and you've got all of the expansions bar the Wolf one, which I mentioned last week, which will cost you more, but you've got the free huge expansions of Prophet and Nightfall and what was the other one? Nightfall, Prophecy, Factions. That's it, Factions. So you'll have all those, and those were, to me, back in the day, £40 games, and I bought them in the big box deluxe thing. So that was 120 quid. Around what was it, 2005, was it? Might be 2005 to 2010, somewhere around there. So yeah, brilliant. You continue. This made me think of a question. You mentioned only having an HD monitor, but I see the 4K TV behind you. Yes. Have you ever plugged your PC into it to see how it looks? ? One of the few perks of living on my own is I've had my PC plugged into the TV in my lounge for years. Now I've finally gone 4K It's stunning, the image quality. Modern games look very cinematic, but also just kicking back with a controller and RetroArch for a quick Galaxian scramble or demon attack is also very impressive, although I know you guys all have specialist kit for that. He's talking about the Mister and so of course. Now, to talk about that, I've been telling you that my PC's on life support. It doesn't have a graphic card other than a 3060 Ti in it. We're up to the 5090s now, so at least 2.5 to 3 years behind. And 4K, hooking this up over there, wouldn't work very well. That doesn't mean that I don't play 4K stuff. I've got my PS5. I have got a multi-system Mister that I haven't even taken out the box yet, that I could plug that in and I could play Galaxian there. But again, that really is a 1080p display on the Mister. So 4K is definitely my PS5. So yeah, by the way, just going to change something. I hope it doesn't cause too much of a problem, but I'm going to configure the video and take that focus control off. There we are. Shouldn't do that anymore. There we are. I think that's fine. So no, I haven't, but when I build my new PC, and it will have to happen, got to buy a processor and a motherboard and all of that sort of stuff when it's allowed. That is a consideration. That TV is a Panasonic 950B, I can't remember from memory, OLED screen, and would look absolutely stunning. Every single 4K disc, which I'm so involved in, is a blessing to watch. It's like, oh, night and day. Even over streaming 4K. I mean, streaming 4K is okay. I know it's compressed and I can see the compression. This is the thing. When you've got a 4K disc of the Fantastic Four, say, right, First Steps, and you go to Disney Plus and you watch the 4K of Fantastic Four First Steps on there, you see the crushed blacks. You just see it, and it makes me go, well, if I hadn't have got that player and that disc, this would have been perfectly acceptable. When you have got it, it's stark in your face, and it's so hard to explain to somebody that difference. You can't show it on YouTube, not really, unless you're doing your YouTube in 4K. But YouTube will compress that when you upload. So, I don't see it myself, how you can actually sort of do it. But anyway, you go, well, I thought this might be a shorter comment than usual, but always something to natter about here. All the best to you and your mum. Take care. And my God, haven't we nattered on your comment? So absolutely fantastic. Thank you for doing that. That's absolutely wonderful. I'm just moving on now. And my salute to you and salute to Martroid. And we move to Ian Hill, the Ramblings, who I do my live on Wednesday. He does an absolute fantastic job of keeping us all entertained during the week. He does his top 5 for every year. At the moment, it's historically subjected movies. He's doing his Doctor Who reviews, his X-Files reviews. Though it's intertwined with music and SFX magazine and a load of other stuff, and then does a live with me. And he's going to be really, really busy, more busy than me, because he's been invited on to many things over Christmas, which I'm dead jealous of. But thinking about it with my mum, it's wise that somebody else is doing that. But I hope I can support my friends that he'll be nattering with. as much as I can. I remember he did one earlier this year, and all I could do was just ask 2 questions and bugger off, and then watch it later on, which filled me with glumness, really, sadness, because in the old days I'd be watching it live and interacting with people in the chat room and all of that sort of stuff. But that's the past, isn't it? I have to move on, and other people therefore may forget me. Probably don't even know who I am anymore. It's those things, and you just go, hey, maybe that's for the best. I've certainly not forgotten them. It's nice sometimes to smile and think back, tinged with sadness on how certain things turned out. But there you go. So let's go on and see what Ian says. So he says, hi, Delboy, hope you and your mum are okay. It's not like me usually, but not feeling too good today. The pain in my leg has been bad. That hasn't helped my mood. Then for the first time, I've been thinking about our Wednesday live chat. We had some awful arguments in the chat. I was really fed up with it all. I just wanted it to stop. Let's get back to discussing the things we love. Yes, we noticed while we were chatting that there were some comments going on in the room, some disagreements, all of that sort of stuff. And that's something that you don't want too much of. They happen. You can't help it. I understand both sides of the argument. It was mostly, I think, about time spent with certain questions that were being asked, and that therefore you need to sort of like step back a little bit maybe. But from Ian and I's point of view, if those questions weren't there, the blog, the live would probably end in an hour. But it's just when you have to rush at the end because there were so many of them that you have to understand the arguments side of things. So yeah, I'm in total agreement with that. We were battling as best as we could. But there we go. He continues, today security from my bank rang me asking me about any transactions in London. Clearly not me. So they have stopped my card, ordered a new one, and stopped my access to my online banking. They were on the phone for at least 30 minutes. They started to get on my nerves. When they started asking about my son's account, that was too much. He's with another bank. None of their business. I told them I'd had enough. Just send me my new card and new online banking code. I said, then bye, and phoned down. They made me paranoid, wondering if they were scammers. So this saga hasn't helped my mood. Do you know what? That sounds like a scam. A bank should not ask you about other accounts. They might ask you about your own, but they can't ask about a family member. If a bank does that, they're breaching all sorts of things. And generally, it's the indication of the scam. Yeah? So that sounds like a scam. I hope it's not. I only know this through recent activity myself. And if your card doesn't turn up within 5 days, call the fraud squad. Simple as that. It'll be on the back of your cancelled card, and you just need to explain to them. And they might even explain to you, no card's been sent. And if that occurs, tell them what's happened, start changing your passwords immediately. Best advice I can give. I've got my fingers crossed here. It's actually filling me with dread for you. And I hope I haven't filled you with dread with what I've just said. These are all just little snippets of advice that I'd give. Maybe it's totally okay. You've got your card now. I hope, for God's sake, that it is. I watched Geronimo, 1962, starring Chuck Connors, and Adam West, set in 1886 after the Indian Wars. And Geronimo leading a small group of Apaches not happy with the land given on the reservation. There was some crooked dealings going on, too, with a businessman and commanding officer. It was a very enjoyable film. I also watched a Best of the Twilight Zone DVD with episodes Time Enough at Last, The Monsters of Maple Street, Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, and The Odyssey of Flight 33. Loved watching them. So glad you did. Loved Twilight Zone. So my question this week is, what are your favourite Twilight Zone episodes, and do they still hold up today? All my best wishes, and have a reet grand time. Wow, what a question, and one that, my God, it would take an age to deliberate. We did touch upon it in the live, and I think that's where that question comes from. I haven't seen the timestamp on this. Because you looked at your Twilight Zone DVD, and it was a mixture of episodes. It wasn't one of those ones that you bought that was a complete series box set. So they were a mixture. That's why you've got Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, which is a much later episode than Time Enough at Last. Time Enough at Last being a series 1. So you mentioned some cracking ones there. Time Enough at Last, my God. Burgess Meredith just blew it out the park there with what would happen to a guy that is so introvert that he reads everything. You know, he reads the advertisement on packets of cereal and the ingredients on ketchup bottles, and that's because of his marriage and his job, which don't allow him those sort of luxuries. And he goes down to the bank vault. He's told to do so by his manager, and a nuclear bomb goes off. The door slams shut, and he wakes up and he goes outside the bank and he finds total destruction. Everything is just blown away. He doesn't know what's going on. We don't know. We assume it's a nuclear explosion. And he wanders around aimlessly looking for people, and he finds no one. Finds all wrecked cars and wrecked buildings and all of that. And it certainly comes to him. He says, but now I've got time. Where's the library? Let's go to the library. Let's see what I can see, what's left behind. And he travels to the library and he puts all the books together, pile of Shakespeare, a lot of books, science fiction, westerns, whatever it is, words of literature, poetry, and what can I say? He bends over to read the first book, his glasses fall off, and that's the end of that story. He had time enough at last, and now time will be weighing on his shoulders. And that's the beauty, I think, of Rod Serling. It's the shock ending and the realization, and also intertwined with what you're doing wrong, society. So that's what got me into anthology and got me into the Twilight Zone as probably being the greatest TV series ever made. And some people will be shouting now, going, you what? That black and white piece of shit, even the colour ones or whatever. Have your own opinion. I'm just saying it's my favourite. I think it's got its worth and everything else. Now, some of the ones that might be in there as well. Yes, Nightmare at 20,000 Feet. William Shatner. Everybody does an impression of William Shatner for that particular episode. Because of the way he talks, he pauses. So he's a paranoid type of passenger on a flight, and he believes he sees a monster trying to blow up the flight. And he opens the curtains in mid-flight. It's raining, there's a storm, there's air turbulence, everything. And he says the immortal line that there's something on the wing, right? But with his type of acting, type of delivery, he exaggerates words. So he goes, there's something on the wing, something on the wing, like this. It's like weird. And he does that through Star Trek in a way. And it's all been explained in his books that he's written about himself, how people have impersonated him. He's found it very flattering. He doesn't see it himself. But he always explained it as, look, I had complex lines to read, and sometimes I'd have to remember them. And sometimes I added it for drama, and other times boredom. And he's very open about it. I find him a very enigmatic character, William Shatner. But yeah, Nightmare at 20,000 Feet is an absolute classic. The Odyssey at Flight 33, less so. A good story about a plane again, flying across the world, goes through some type of anomaly, science anomaly, ends up, when they look out the window, seeing dinosaurs. And based on 1950s, 60s technology, these dinosaurs are not Ray Harryhausen works. It looks atrocious. But with the Twilight Zone, it's all about fantasy and your own imagination. And I can put my own picture of a Ray Harryhausen scene down there. Not that I think you'd be able to see that in a jumbo jet flying at God knows how many feet. But it's an interesting story. But you wanted to know my own. Well, my favourite story, and I've said it quite a few times, is To Serve Man. And I try not to give too much about the game away of what To Serve Man is, but it's been parodied in Simpsons episodes, Futurama. It's everywhere. It's a fantastic story. It's got that twist at the end. Rod Serling is a god, as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to writing. And he wrote 3/4 of the Twilight Zone episodes through its seasons. So, I look at it that it's just a fantastic anthology series. To Serve Man is my favourite. It's got the best ending. One that is almost as shocking as the Planet of the Apes film, which has some of Rod Serling's elements in it, even if he didn't write the script or all of it. You've mentioned Time Enough at Last. You've mentioned Nightmare at 20,000 Feet. People Are Alike All Over is another early season 1 story, which is not well received now. But for me, it was a fantastic experience. Roddy McDowall was a great actor. And the more I see of his past work, the more I appreciate him. And he did a story where he landed on an alien planet, and the aliens sort of befriended him and said, do you want to move into this house? We know of you, and we've seen how you live. Come into here and rest from your long flight. And they do that. He does that. But then he finds that he's trapped. He's locked in. He can't open doors, all that sort of stuff. And all of a sudden the curtains go by and there's all these aliens looking at him, and he sees a sign. He looks round and sees a sign, and it says, human in his natural habitat. And that's why it's called People Are Alike All Over. So he'd put this alien in a zoo for observation. And the Martians, or the native people that lived on this planet, now regarded this thing as something to watch in a zoo, like we look at tigers and monkeys. I find that a great story. One that my sister remembers, because we have had a chat. And one that I greatly remember is a Telly Savalas story called Living Doll. Living Doll, yeah. With Talkie Tina. That's it, Talkie Tina. This man is a father to a child and takes toys away from his kid, and the doll's alive. and only to him. So it turns its head around, and it can turn around 360 degrees, and it would say things like, "I'm Talkie Tina, and I'm going to kill you," like this. It's as Chucky must have been influenced by some of this, but Telly Savalas is going around everywhere trying to destroy this doll, shave its head off, set it alight, all of sorts of stuff. And it keeps coming back with horrible lines that are very spooky. That's a great story. One that resonated with me because of being picked on was Eye of the Beholder. Eye of the Beholder is an interesting story because it tells the tale of surgeons operating on a patient, and it's all very dark. Now, you have to understand that certain people will write stories to meet a budget, and if you think about it, you don't need a lot of room for equipment if everything's in pitch black. And there was a purpose behind these faces that are in the dark all the time, and the light was only on the patient. And this patient had bandages all around its face. And the end of the story, the reveal is that all the bandages are removed, and you see this beautiful young woman. I think she's blonde, striking eyes. She asks to look into a mirror, and she screams, "I'm so ugly," all of this sort of stuff. And then you see the surgeons come out of the light. They're in shock. They thought that they'd fixed the patient, and they're all mutations. Nose is stretched across, and eyes drooping, and skin sort of got ripples in it. And that's why it's called Eye of the Beholder, because it's about ugliness is in the eye of the beholder. So if you were beautiful on this planet, you were ugly. Such a cracking story. And probably a student's go-to episode on what you can do to write good character design along with keeping within budgets. I can only imagine that. I'm trying to think now. Yeah, One for the Angels. One for the Angels rung a bell with me, and I had to think just then, because it was about a salesman who should have died, didn't, and tried to keep alive, but a mysterious character came up, in this case an angel, and he said, "I'm not ready to go." And he said, "Well, what would make it so that you could go?" And he says, "Well, I'm a salesman. I want to do one final pitch." So it's One for the Angels. This is the pitch. So he did this pitch, and it was One for the Angels. I mean, he tried to sell everything, and he was bringing everything into it, and all of that sort of stuff. He saved this girl, I think, with this pitch. And the angel asked him, "That was definitely one for me. Are you ready to go?" And he was, and they walk off into the distance and they disappear. One for the Angels is just one of those ones where I see a character that's greedy, really. I don't want to die. I'm not going to die. I've beaten it. Great. But then realizes, I'm ready to go when I've done the greatest thing I could ever do in my life. Then I've done what I need. I'm ready to go then. So that's brilliant. I won't talk about this one, but it's a fantastic story that I urge you to go and see, and that's A Passage for Trumpet, which is a fantastic story full of alcoholism and a trumpet player. Such a fantastic story, starring a favourite actor of mine. He played Quincy. I'll go and let you look that up. But if you're interested in Quincy and that actor, you'll recognise why such a character-related story is there. And the last one is going to be a Christmas one, which is a Night of the Meek. Yeah, Night of the Meek. It's an unusual Twilight story for several reasons. When you watch it, the quality of the film that they recorded on was done on videotape, I think. So it looks very, very different. And it's about a character that is a store Santa. And the end of the story is fairly obvious. But it's a holiday season story, and sometimes a fan favourite, depending on what you look at. And one that I watch generally at Christmas. Everybody talks about the films they watch at Christmas, but there are obviously TV favourites. And it's one that I watch. So there we go. I think I've covered all of that. I definitely spent a lot of time doing that, so I'm going to have to move on and hope there's not too many more questions on here. And we get to Colin Jones, aka Ponder, and salute my friend Ian, and looking forward to our next Wednesday. And please go over and like and subscribe. My God, I don't know what you're doing here. You ought to be doing that now. And it's the same for this next guy, Colin Jones, aka Ponder, a great friend of mine. We talk on a tech level that we understand, and he's always trying to help. And I was very jealous of him this week because a friend sent him a computer that he'd never had, and it happens to be a computer that I never had. I've always mentioned machines that I've had for a short period of time and gone, but I never really talk about the BBC B, and that's because never had one. Too expensive. So there you go. And I don't even have one even as a retro collector. And I don't consider myself, that word retro collector, it's terrible. I don't consider myself a person that's got many classic computers of the time. It's the best way to express it. I've still got my Atari 800. I've still got my Commodore 64, VIC-20. Bought later, not the ones that I had as a kid, because I sold those. I've still... I haven't got my A1000. I'd love one. But there were machines that I had that I just worked on, I fixed and got rid of, and those were Spectrums and Oric 1s and all of that sort of stuff. I was in a very fortunate situation to be able to work on those and then sell them on to buy things for my own personal machine. And of course at school we had Commodore PETs and Apple IIs. So I was fortunate to be able to work on a number of them. But somebody to give you a BBC, wow. And I believe it's a friend of mine. Didn't bloody think about me, did he, bastard? But anyway, Colin says, weather not good, that's an understatement. But it's sadly something we need to get used to. It's rapidly becoming the norm to have extreme weather. And yeah, it's because I was saying that I was thinking of my friends in Wales and Colin is in Wales. So I was thinking about him when I was saying it. Communication is always the key. Sadly, some people lack the essential skill. And my answer to that one is that I don't think, in my personal opinion, the skill's missing. It's whether they want to use it or whether they want to. And that's a personal expression, meaning nothing really. Send in my regards to your mum, and I'll definitely be doing that. The Titfield Thunderbolt is a classic. The mainline station in the film is now a small station, which was a request stop when I used to drive the route at Freshford. If you don't know already, Colin is a train driver. More than that, I believe. I'm probably doing a an underestimate of just how involved he is with trains, but his knowledge definitely is going to be there. Windows ME was very accurately named myalgic encephalomyelitis. My God. Windows ME Millennium Edition, but reads me, is what he's trying to express there. I'm not very good with reading out long words. I know what he means. But it's very much an insult to all users who bought that awful operating system. You said, yes, I know the tax discussion wasn't meant to come across that way. It just appeared that way. You totally get it, yeah. I tried to express that from last week's blog. The problems with Blackpool were more storm-related than EV-related. This is talking about his electronic vehicle. The EV stuff was my own stupid fault. Yeah, understood, but still. My answer to my question last time would be Pluto being called a planet. Can't remember what the question was. Good answer, though, I'm pretty sure. I used to do trigonometry using logbooks at school. I couldn't. I'm fine with basic maths, including square roots, but start to lose it when it comes to calculus. Yeah. Nah, I'd be terrible at that. I mean, I've already said that my maths was atrocious. I can see nothing about VHS that makes me want to use it again. Maybe nostalgic novelty, but it really is a terrible format by today's standard. Great for the time, but far surpassed now. And I'll urge you to look at a report that talks about all formats. There was this guy that looked at Rambo First Blood and decided he was going to watch it for every format, and he bought every machine, and he bought a CRT and a monitor to do a comparison. Now, there was a format on VHS, digital HD on videotape, and it is so in comparison with Blu-ray, it's terrible. You know, I mean, it really is an eye-opener. I would have thought, wow, with its so many lines of image on audio tape, and its medium would make you think, of course, discs that we play our stuff on is going to be better. But not so. Not so. You don't see a way of wanting to use it again. There's a necessity for me because there are videos that I haven't converted digitally, which means that the medium for me needs to be around. But then, when that's out the way, yeah, I'm like you. So it's each to everybody, and it would be a novelty going back to it, but I've got a necessity to do it. So I've been meaning to show a video that was recorded at Universal Studios, which was called The Star Trek Adventure, where I dressed up as a captain of a starship. My girlfriend at the time was Spock. Wow, the Vulcan scientist. And it's intermixed with special sequences that were filmed for it, but also parts of the film. I think at the time it was Wrath of Khan and The Search for Spock. So intertwined with my acting and my girlfriend's acting is the Star Trek crew and special sequences from those films. And it's about 15 minutes long, and it's in NTSC, and I've got my video recorders upstairs in the attic, and I've got a VHS NTSC to PAL converter, which means I could plug it into my capture device and I could record it. So there is a necessity. The alternative video platform is Odyssey. Yes, thank you for reminding me. I remember during the week I need to move my blog stuff across. My question relates to something that has just happened. What is the greatest gift you've ever received from someone who is not family. Wow. I've never received many gifts in the last 5 years, and going back further, it was all my parents, and God bless her, and God bless him, my auntie and uncle, and the rest was nothing. So I'm balking a little bit at the question here. I've had a couple of presents just recently over Christmas. Muckman-Movies reminded me of a present he sent me, and I've had several presents this year that have taken me back. I can't remember the greatest one. I look at any present I receive as being thoughtful and great. This is where I go back to that hermit loneliness thing that comes in, because I always looked at Christmas as in a child, as when you wrote something down and you got it, as being the person knew me, knew what I liked, and got me something, and it showed thought. And I balked at the thought is opening it, but the thing inside is not you. Now, that didn't mean that I didn't appreciate it. It's just I thought how little the person knows me to get me that. You know, it's like socks, say. You know, it's like, well, what do you say about socks that have been bought for you? Do my feet smell? Do you think I haven't got enough already? Is it you knew I've talked about it and I've got holes in them? What is that? Rather than somebody that opens it up and they've got their favourite perfume, which means that they know the brand they're even doing it. Do you see what I mean? And you look at it and go, anybody can do a gift buy, but it's the thought that goes into it. And then as the years have gone on, I've looked at it as, no, it's the thought that they actually thought about you getting you the present. And that's where you have to go into it and go, all those jokes you heard said, oh, I got socks this year, I got a tie this year. Moany bastards. Look what you got, something. And that's where I feel myself with a bit of remorse, because I looked at some of the gifts I got and went, I don't even drink, or I haven't even I haven't even got something to use this with. I don't even go to work. What am I going to wear a tie for? You know, and you don't look at things like that. Shouldn't do. So, you know, again, fault mine, really. So to answer the question is really difficult. I can't remember, Ponder, if you've sent me something. Don't think you have. Don't know. I know I've received digital presents, you know, games for me to play, films digitally to watch that they've been purchased by a code, stuff from Amazon delivered to me. Every single one I look back on and go, wow, thank you so much for turning what is going to be a horrible time at Christmas into something great. And you have to remember here that my mum's not going to be able to go shopping, and, you know, it's totally out of my hands. I can buy something for me and say, from Mum. And that's probably what I'll do, and I'll open it up and say, thanks, Mum. Because that's the point. You make it for others to enjoy. You that's what you've got to do. And I'll stand by that. So I can't really answer that one, Colin, but thank you so much for the thoughtful idea. And I don't want anybody to think, oh dear, that poor sad loner's going to got nothing to open at Christmas and all of that sort of stuff. I do dwell on that Christmas Eve. Christmas Day, I've opened them all, and I go, great. But all the time I'm thinking, can we just get Christmas over? And it's all because of the lost sparkle. It's other people getting exactly what they want and you getting not what you want. And it should be all about the religious part, possibly, of Christmas to a lot of people, and the thoughtfulness of even receiving one to others. You know, I know that I will be sending out this year the same as I do every year, but I never look at it as a waste of money. I do it because I want that person to understand they had a huge impact on my life this year. Some people I can do that for because I know their address. Other people I can't do that for. Don't know where they live. Don't know what they do. Don't know what games they play. All that sort of stuff. Don't know what platform they're on. And to those, I think, I can't do anything for you other than something that I'll do in a blog, maybe the next one. And it's amazing that my 200th blog is next week, and it happens to be the Sunday before Christmas. Wow. Who'd have thought that when I first started this, that the 200th one would fall on such a day of the week, you know, before a major event. So, yeah. Moving on, and salute my friend. And if you haven't already, please go and bookmark and subscribe to Colin Jones. He's got 2 channels. Always list a lot of these in my description. They're in every one. I don't know why I do that, to be quite honest. Each one should be an individual story element, but it's just that I want the names to be seen. So there you go. So we're moving on, and we get to Wee Bob Art. He's put, "Hi Del, I thought I left a comment but unsure as my work was very busy this week. I was then working 2 days. I would normally be off. Who knows? I'm a bit into this one and enjoying listening along as always. All the best to you and your family. Thankfully, I am finishing up work on the 18th, which I am looking forward to. Question." Oh, we got a question. "I know that life is busy for you, but in the past, was there a time of the year that you look forward to? Perhaps summer for a holiday, or some other time when an event was on and you would take time off work?" All of them, I can say about that. The biggest excitement I had in the 90s was traveling to America so much. I would go sometimes twice a year, and I would save up, go over there, get a convertible car, speak to people I'd met on Yahoo Messenger, or some people that I would just meet in bars and talk to that would eventually become friends because of my frequency of going. Buy gifts like Hollywood, I don't know, like Hard Rock Cafe t-shirts. Planet Hollywood is what I was thinking of, t-shirts. Universal Studio t-shirts. Disney t-shirts, all sorts of stuff. Little mementos. Taking pictures where I could, which was difficult because you're by yourself, so you couldn't do selfies. Not back in that time. And just having a time where I was by myself, listening to my music, going to my next adventure and my next city or town, looking at fantastic scenery like Yosemite Park, where I saw El Capitan for the first time, the Mammoth Lakes, the snow at a town called Bishop, Death Valley, SeaWorld and San Diego, the Hollywood Bowl, all major events, the going over to Alcatraz, the Golden Gate Bridge, going over that, and the surrounding beauty of it all. Going to the town of Carmel, south of San Francisco, going to Clint Eastwood's hotel, and he was there. and he was playing at the piano. I've said that story before. Going down Interstate 1 instead of 101. Anybody that knows America will know what I'm talking about. You go down Interstate 1 and it will take you a day to get to Los Angeles from San Francisco. Go down the 101, you're there in 4 hours. It's as simple as that. The Interstate 1 is a coast road. It's where the Tiny Dancer tune comes from, because it's talking about blinking lights on the highway. And it's a windy road. You cannot, at some points you have to go 20 kilometers an hour, 20 miles an hour, 20 kilometers an hour. I can't quite remember, but it's because it's windy. It's a coast road. And you're going downhill and uphill and downhill and all sorts of stuff. And it's flat for Interstate 101. So, yes, all of that comes to mind, my travels. But I've always looked forward, sometimes to other events, stuff I've bought, to go to a concert or whatever it is, and took time off work for it. Less so now Christmas, for the reasons I've mentioned. My birthday, never. Can go do one. And has been that way for about 25 years. Yeah, that's all I can do to answer that question. So thanks very much, Wee Bob Art. And if you haven't guessed, Wee Bob Art does have a channel. He's a brilliant digital artist, which I've learned from digital artists. I even mentioned the last couple of weeks that I went to a channel where they were saying how to draw form. I hope Wee Bob Art might have smiled at that. It definitely was good. And salute, and please go over there. His description is in my title there. And we moved to Steve's Gaming Part 2. I think we're getting close to the end. And he's put, hi Del. This is my friend Steve. So salute, you bastard. Fucking hate you, little shit. That's my salute that I have to do. Sorry, have to. And he loves it, so don't worry. Hi Del. I hope you and your mum are okay and the past week wasn't too stressful for you. As for myself, well, I was very ill a week ago. I'm almost back to normal now, but the flat looks like a bomb site. It's now less than 2 weeks to Christmas. The kitchen still isn't completed and has no power to the oven, so I'm living on sandwiches and damn awful pot noodles. The hallway isn't done either, and today they dripped out the toilet and shower. I'm beginning to think I will need to find a cheap hotel to stay in over Christmas. This is really stressing me now, and Christmas is my most loved time of year. But right now, it's impossible to get into Christmas feeling here, as we can't even put decorations up. And on top of everything else, the Formula One season ended in the worst possible way, so that pissed me off too. Anyway, let me throw a question your way. So to answer that, I'm just so glad that Christmas is such a magical time for you. You've just done a wonderful thing for my friend Colin. Dead jealous of that. You're such a nice and generous person. My God, what a thing to do. And the only thing I can say is, do these builders not know or give you a guide that this might be like this Christmas? I take it they should be able to give you an estimate, even if they miss it. But you should know whether you're going to have power to your oven or not. I mean, my God, that's quality of life, man. I know that getting hold of the people that you pay rent to aren't going to be much impressed or tell you much, but the builders, wow, I'd have thought they'd have had something. But that's just blew me away, really, that you're in that situation. Anyway, let me throw a question your way. If you could plan your absolute perfect Christmas day of all time, what would you do? What would you eat? What would you watch? And what would you play? All the best, my friend, and please give my love to your mum, and of course I will. And such a difficult one to answer with regards to what I've been talking about in regards to Christmas Day. I dread it. If I could have the perfect Christmas day, it would be have my mum back and have me and my mum only back, if you see what I mean. Not in a selfish way, but just because familiarity and the love for my mum. It was our special time. To have my dad back would be the icing on the cake. But you ask specifics. What would you do on the perfect Christmas day? Because I don't know what my perfect Christmas day would be, it's going to be what I'm going to be doing anyway, which is going for my Christmas Day walk. What would you eat? Always the Christmas dinner. We have cockerel and another meat, which is usually gammon. Cut into slices and put in with roast potatoes, veg, Yorkshire puddings, pigs in their blankets, which is sausages wrapped in bacon. It's not a derogatory term, pigs in their blankets. What would you watch? Oh, mince pies, obviously, with double cream. What would you watch? Oh, all historic stuff. Morecambe and Wise, Two Ronnies, my favourite Christmas film, Scrooged, It's a Wonderful Life, Muppet Christmas Carol, that sort of stuff. And what would you play? Thinking of the past, that would have been board games. Thinking of early adulthood, leading up to now, computer games. I remember I was so lonely one Christmas, I played a game called Craft the World. Couldn't believe that I was putting it on at 10 or 11 in the morning and turning it off at 2 or 3 in the morning the next day, going to bed, waking up late and ad infinitum all the way through Christmas, because I was in a very bad time, very in on myself, introvert. So yeah, Craft the World. But I'd probably play all the stuff that cheered me up. So back in the day, I'd have been playing Elite, Impossible Mission, Defender of the Crown on the Amiga, and Marble Madness and Mind Walker, which I will do that video of Mind Walker, the first game I ever played on the Amiga and the one that came with my system. And PC games, I remember getting Dungeon Keeper close to Christmas and Black and White close to Christmas and TFX, a flight simulator game on the Amiga, and then on the PC just as I was crossing over. On the 60, going back to the 64, Mercenary, Ghostbusters, so many, matey, so many. And later on I'd be playing real-time strategy games like Supreme Commander, and I eat hours into the Christmas time period. So fantastic. Thank you so much, and salute to you, and thanks for all you're doing with your advent calendar at the moment. I'll talk about that later. And salute. He'll like that, don't worry. Moving on, and we get to Carl Todd, and he's put, "Hi Del, it was great to hear that you finally have the driving licence issues resolved. I've been snowed under with work and family. I'm going to jump straight to the questions since I'm so late. Question 1, what's the rarest computer you have ever used, excluding ones at museums and exhibitions? Oh my God. Yes, because a lot of the stuff I never played or owned, I played at exhibitions and museums. That's true. Right, let me think. So, what's it called? Oh, it was white. Yes. My couple of doors down, I talked about a guy, and he had all the modern stuff. Very early on, when I eventually got my VIC-20. He had a computer called a Jupiter Ace. Yes. I'm thinking of it now. It was white, and it had the very first Oryx type keyboard, if I remember rightly. These little pellet type keyboard. Not membrane. Don't remember it being membrane. Jupiter Ace, yeah. Going back to the Oryx, I had that one Christmas, played it, rebuilt it, should I say, played it, sold it in January the next year. But it's not talked about much, the Oryx. There's the Oryx 1, and I did have the Oryx, is it Atmos? Yeah, the real keyboard with orange buttons, which wasn't much of a change to the Oryx, to be quite honest. It was more memory, I think, more slightly different speed, more cosmetic with its keyboard than anything. And here's an obscure one. Don't know if anybody will remember this, but when I used to go to the computer club that I talked about in Bloxham, there was a guy there outside of our club that I bumped into going to the post office one day, and I went round his house. I knew him briefly from school, and he had what they call an Osborne 1. Now the Osborne 1 is a very, I should think, a very obscure one for this. I can imagine it had a screen and a keyboard built in type thing, but it was one that I did a little program on when I was learning at school. The first program I ever wrote at school was not 10 print welcome to my world or something, 20 go to 10. The first one I wrote involved strings. Now, what does that mean to you? You set yourself a string up, like a string equals, right? Which means that when you refer to a string, it puts it into a hold of memory and then relays it back. So I did a small program that said, "What is your name?" And then it said, "You're a wonderful person, A string." And it would have their name, and it would go off the screen because I did a loop. Right? I can't explain it any other better way than that. Trouble was, when I was going into Comet and Currys and Dixon's, and they had the computers on, everybody was changing the border colours and all that sort of stuff. Anne would write their name and have it go across the screen. I couldn't quite remember the string command, or how I wrote that, until a bit later on. And then they'd sort of like taken away the ability for you to write things on computers at Currys and all that sort of, and Comet and so forth. So interesting memory, but thanks very much for that. Hope that answers your question. So the Osborne 1, go and look that one up. 2, do you have any thoughts on the game Horses, which was banned from Steam, Epic Games, etc.? It follows similar themes to movies such as Salo. Okay. I don't know anything about Horses. Let me just type it in. Right, Wikipedia is up. Let's click on it. Oh, hang on. I could probably show you this. I've got the wiki page up. I haven't done this in a while. There we go. Let's expand this out a little bit. There. Here we go. Horses is a 2025 video game developed and published by the Italian game production studio Santa Regione. The game, created in partnership with Andrea Luco Borella, is a horror-adventure video game in which a young man tends to a farm occupied by enslaved humans dressed as horses. Weird. The game includes interactive components interspersed with experimental imagery such as silent film motifs, camera shots and intertitles, and live-action footage. Boreria, an Italian designer and filmmaker, created the concept for the game and pitched it to Santa Regione, citing surrealist cinema as an inspiration for the game design. In November 2025, shortly before release of the game, developer Santa Regione discussed that Steam had made a final decision not to distribute the game on the platform, which was followed by Epic Games Store taking similar steps. The developer stated the view that platform owners, including Valve, had not provided transparent reasons for the content ban. The ban prompted commentary about the role of game distribution, censorship, and the impact on independent game production. Upon release, Horses released favourable reviews. I won't go through the plot. Development. Horses was conceived by Angelo Borelli, a film graduate at the Roma Tre University, developing the game's concept and directing the live-action sequences. Borelli stated the design and aesthetics of the game was inspired by surrealist filmmakers Louis Brunel and Jan Svanemajer, and work of filmmaker Yorgos Lanthimos. Destroyed all these names, by the way. Borelli also cited childhood experiences of fear of horses and their handlers on the grandfather's farm as a source of the game's direction. The game was developed by Santa Regione, an Italian game studio formed in 2010 by Pietro Riva and Nicola Tedesco, who had created titles including Wheels of Aurelia and Mediterranean Inferno. After finding difficulty in pitching the game to studios, Borelli stated the partnership arose from a chance meeting. Development cost the studio $100,000 in costs, half of which was raised with friends. Horses was announced in June 2023 as part of the IGN Summer of Gaming event, alongside the release of a trailer. The game experienced delays and its intended 2024 release due to the undisclosed reasons, with developers announcing the final release date and trailer of the game in 2025. In November 2025, immediately prior to the game's release date, Denny announced that there was unable to release Horses on Steam as Valve Corporation had made a final decision to not permit the game on the platform. Following this announcement, Epic Games Store sent an email to the same company stating that they had resubmitted the International Age Rating Coalition questionnaires for Horses and received results suggesting an adult-only 18+ rating, and that they would therefore not sell the game as it was against their policy to carry AO-related games. Santa Regione stated that when they had done the same, their questionnaire results suggested a mature 17+ rating. Distributor GOG, that's Good Old Games, issued a statement that it would retain the game on its platform, stating that it was proud to host it, as players should be able to choose the experience that speaks to them. Right, gotcha, understood. So a game came out, horror-based, involving horses. Valve and Epic saw it as an 18+. GOG stood by the rights to say, we'll still sell your title, and let the owners or the purchasers look at their own conscience for buying it and their own reasons. So in other words, you had an outlet to buy it. I think I'd stand with GOG a little bit on this, but I do understand with things as they are, you need to have some type of classification like we used to have on boxes. I never really liked them back then, but I understand them a little bit now, more, or I give them carte blanche a little bit. But yeah, wow. Didn't know about that going on, boys and girls and everyone. Well, you've opened my eyes to that. Take care, mate, and all the best to your mum. Thanks very much. Cheers. And we get into the last two. The last two, one of them is Martroid. I'm watching this while I'm away camping with my partner at a lovely little place called Sandspit. The name doesn't really do it justice. The only problem is I've currently got a crushing case of gout in my right ankle, which is quite painful. It means I can literally only hobble about on it. Anyway, you may have my sympathy regarding your arthritis, etc. I know that the blog is helping to ease me into the day ahead. Well, thank you very much, Martroid. I'm glad I'm helping in some way. Salute, my friend. And I dare say we'll speak before Christmas. But so I'll say it in the next blog, to be quite honest. And the last one is from Floyd, who I've never... I don't think he's commented before. If he has, it might have been a small one at the beginning, but he's put, "Love your vlogs, Dave in Blackburn." And I sent a message back, "Appreciated, thank you very much." And that ends that section, which means that we really now move on to watched on YouTube. And I'm just going to take another break because I've been going now for about an hour and a half since the last pause. In fact, probably 2 hours. And I'll be back shortly. Thanks very much.
And I'm back, and in some ways I wish I hadn't took a break. I was going to go and see my mum, but I went in there just to get a little bit of something to eat because I'm hungry, because it's going a bit late this, and I could hear voices, and you know, my sister's there. And I just know that I can't go in there. And it goes back to that, what I was saying. I feel trapped. I feel lonely. Some people will say, well, that's your own bloody fault. Some people might take this as a cry for help. It's not either, really, but it's just nervousness, trepidation, all sorts. And, yeah, it is what it is. So, you know, I feel like I'll be in here till my sister leaves, and then I'll ask my mum if she had a good day and ask what visitors she might have had, and she might remember, she might not, and then it'll be lovely time with me and my mum till 4, although I'll be doing a lot of work, I dare say, cleaning up, and start work again on Monday, and you wonder where sometimes your weekend's gone. And when you're in your room all the time, it's awful. But anyway, we get to what I've read, what I've watched. Less really than normal. Watched on YouTube. I always watch the top 4. This Week in Retro, Techmoan, Gadget Show, Chronologically Gaming. They all had something out this week. This Week in Retro had Your Move, Statue Creep. It's happened before, will happen again, and back to the grid. One of them I knew all about, so it was just nice to listen to. It happened before, it'll happen again, is about RAM. We've talked about it. If you go to Amazon now and type in DDR5 RAM, you'll see the prices. Click on the scale for prices historically. You'll see that several months ago you could pick that up for £100 odd. It's ridiculous. And it talks a little bit in there that it's happened before. Yes, it has. It'll happen again. Yes, it definitely will. Will it settle down? Obviously it will. Does that help people that are trying to build a PC now? No. And I'm one of those. So, yeah. It was therefore very interesting to listen to. Techmoan was a review of a Ghetto Blaster, and it's from a company called We Are Rewind. It's called the Curtis Blaster. I'm not into those, but it's interesting to note that all of these people that are manufacturing tape deck machines these days are building from a mechanism that's been around now for 15 years. And all you can do with that mechanism is slight alterations, and they're cheap crap mechanisms. There's a rule or a law or a patent against it. So, and you're not going to spend all your money building or developing your own. So you build on a platform that's there. Apparently this guy, Techmoan, loved it. But, my God, all it is a tape deck player with Bluetooth functionality, a couple of VU meters. It's got 2.5 systems, so it's got 2 speakers and a bass. The standard equalizer and stuff. £389 this thing is. Yes. For somebody that, and it always goes down to this, it's only as expensive as you think that you need to pay. I looked at it and I went, in my head, I'd buy that for about 250 quid. 389, wow. But its sounding is fantastic apparently, and the tape deck is second to none on the market. So who am I to say? If I was in the market to buy one, probably I'd be going, it gives a shit. 389, okay. Take me a couple of months to pay to coop that money back, but I get something that I need. But it's like anything, and that's what I always look at the world as, and that's probably what I'm looking at RAM pricing at. What can I do about it? Nothing. So you do what you can. Gadget Show. Is this the end of TV podcast? Yes, they went into the how TV is, TV at Christmas, the channels, what we got now, and how the market is moving, and how YouTube is expanding and everything else. So that was interesting. And chronologically, gaming was 1982 continued. He's going to be there for a while. I've mentioned it before. And the game of choice was Wizard of War on the, I think it was the Atari 2600. I don't think it was the arcade version. Could have been the Atari 8-bit, not sure. But Wizard of War is always a joy to watch. So that was great. Other stuff I watched, very nearly interesting, is a channel. It did the 30 of the best optical illusions. Really enjoyed that. I used to like those sort of things being brought up in meetings. You know, you'd have somebody would be talking at length about how work is and all this sort of stuff, and how we look at life, and they'll bring up an optical illusion, and I'd go, oh God, yeah, it makes you think, doesn't it, how your eyes work and that. So that was quite good. Then I moved on to Arena Perfection's Gaming Hub. That's right, because this week has been the launch of Terminator 2D No Fate. And I've been watching the development of this because it's supposed to be a game that has its foothold in the past in regards to sideways scrolling sort of shoot 'em up type things, but with a movie license like Terminator 2, like Ocean used to do with RoboCop and all that sort of stuff. Only it's done by people that really have a care for the films and the games and want to move the story on through playable medium. And that means in the story you can change how the story was in the films but still keep the heart of the game, or you could play it straight through like the film. It's got a good response. There's a couple that have got their knickers in a twist a bit, saying that the game is too expensive. Yes, you can buy it on physical media, and when you do, it comes in collector's editions and it costs 60 quid or something. I believe the marketing when they were doing the review wasn't out. I think it's eventually settled at a £25 game. I would say that that's still on the pricey side, but it certainly looks like something that's fun to play. I wouldn't mind it. Then I looked at Jerry Anderson's website or YouTube channel. They were doing a Thunderbirds Blu-ray restoration update. That's because they're going through another restoration period. That was great. Then I saw something called Half the Picture. I've gotten into looking at some of these interviews. This one was on Peter Capaldi. So he was talking about his life in acting from his very early days to him doing directing, which I didn't know he'd won awards for, and producing, what he's doing at the moment with Apple Plus TV with his wife, and of course his time on Doctor Who and The Thick of It and a load of other things that I've seen. Now The Thick of It is something I need to go and look at. I think I saw one episode. It was about politics, so it turned me off. But I used to watch Yes Minister and Spitting Image and all of that sort of stuff. So I need to go back and look at that
the thick of it sounds like something I'll enjoy now. So that's something that I got from Half the Picture. There was another channel called Thinking Critical. And this was very something that I'm aware of and something that I knew of. And it's about comics. So you'll be a bit bored with this. But the video was called He Predicted How Comics Would Die, Then They Ignored Him. And it's all about Jim Shooter. Now, Jim Shooter was the earliest chief of comics, chief editor or chief of anything. Stan Lee was one of those people. And he foresaw how comics were going, you know, in regards to the fact that artists should get more recognition, that going through a distribution route would be the death knell, that gimmicks would come in regards to selling stuff, which happened. And that is where the death of comics comes into play, along with the principal medium in on the whole. But he didn't predict that, I don't think. So I already knew about Jim Shooter. I already knew that they considered him an ogre and didn't understand him and what some of his terms were. But this was back in the late 80s. But they ignored him, and I know that much. And he wasn't well received, and people were happy when he left, but everything he said came true. It's a shame. And then there's Guild Wars 2. The channel Guild Wars 2, which had a video out called The Making of Guild Wars 25 Years of ArenaNet. And ArenaNet is the company that brought it out. And it talked about the developers, showed videos of the people when it was on launch day, where it all started from, which was basically 3 computers in the living room of some mother's house. Moved into yet another living room where it was 4 computers. And then they finally got some money together and got a premises, expanded, and Guild Wars was released. And that took about 5 years. Amazing. And you saw all of the changes to the interface while you were looking at some of these pictures, because you could see them on the monitors. And it's amazing how development goes, how slow it was for them back then, and how fast it's gone since then. So that's pretty much that. That's what I watched, and there's some very intriguing things in there. I hope you go and watch those. The rest is going to be my friends and stuff. You probably know about them already. But there's Ian Hill, The Ramblings. So this is Film, TV, Soundtrack YouTube that I put it under. Ian Hill, The Ramblings, as you know, is a big supporter of me, and I'm a huge supporter of him. Don't know where I'd be on a Wednesday without it. And he's done his top 5 historical films, 1955 to 1960. He's probably done more since then. He's probably 61 now. Doctor Who review of Edge of Destruction, which is a 2-parter after the Dalek story, which is very interesting. And I think I mentioned it a bit last week that I went on a bit further when he was, because I knew that that was coming up. X-Files review season 5 episode 9. Wow. He's moving through those. And then the Live with Me, which I'm always appreciative of, and it's absolutely brilliant. Absolutely marvellous. Loved that. Please go and have a check of his channel. Please like if you like anything there. Definitely subscribe if you do. He definitely, I believe, deserves what he gets subscription wise and likes. I wish I could like more than once. You know what I mean? Then there's Mondo Chelevic Movies, which I always go back to for the horror stuff. Probably don't watch it every week, although I do go and check. And that's because he has got a Patreon set, so sometimes there's something not there. But if you're interested in horror, you go and look. But as we move towards Christmas, I'm less into the horror mood. But I did watch that he did Don't Open Till Christmas, and The Hyena as 2 film new titles that have come out from 88 films, and just goes to show you that horror is also in Christmas period time. So of course, you know, there's things like Terrifier and all that sort of stuff, Black Christmas and all. So I know of the horror in Christmas, but it's nice, you know. I used to watch the old, I think it's Amicus, that did anthology horror films that would have a Christmas themed one. There was a famous one with Joan Collins, I think, with a Santa going about that's escaped from a asylum. She's just killed her husband, and the kid upstairs is trying to get to sleep, waiting for Christmas to come, for Christmas, for the presents on Christmas Day. So that's a famous one I remember from memory. Might be tying it up with two stories, to be quite honest. But then we move on to Through the Lens. He did some shorts, not what I was expecting, a film called Alf. Is it Alaya? Yeah, something like that. You'd need to go to his channel anyway to go and have a little look at it. Through the Lens is great. He does film reviews, much like Barry Norman a little bit, quite in depth, with an eye differently than what most other reviewers do. That's what I like about his channel. He's very young and he watches a variety of films that I wouldn't even consider, and he's opened my mind to a number of cinema aspects that's out there at the moment. Did you see that? He did Five Nights at Freddy's 2 review, which a lot of people did the week before. And he did a Let's Go Live, which I couldn't attend because obviously I was looking after my mum. But, absolutely wonderful channel. I like going back there from time to time just to see how he's doing. Nice guy. Spoken to him as well. Muckman-Movies. Surprise new 4K release unboxing. Yes, he did there's a title that a lot of people have been looking forward to, which I wasn't aware of, in 4K, that is going out of print soon. He believes, and I should think that's true, and urges you to have a think, maybe consider this as a present. I'm going to download it and buy it myself if I think that's true. And I should probably be ordering that at the end of the week, I should think, as a present for myself at Christmas. And then there's Commode on Film and Commode and Mayo's Take. Now, Commode on Film is the more talky side of things. It's like a podcast with a movie director, a young one at that, well, not well known. He was talking about The Social Network 15 years later, and that's because the film The Social Network is now 15 years old, and there's a new one coming out. So they were talking about the aspects of that film and how pertinent they are for today and what the world looks like now. So that was very good. I really enjoyed that. And then Simon Mayo, who used to be a radio broadcaster, I think he still is. He does his film reviews on YouTube now, and they did Wake Up Dead Man, A Knives Out Mystery, Goodbye June, Lurker, and Live Christmas Spectacular. Reviews, absolutely fantastic. I do like to hear an insight on them. If there's a film that I know that's coming out that week that I want to see, I tend to not listen. But that's because I want to watch it and not have an opinion or know about it much. So if you're interested in reviews, Commode is really quite good. Really like him. Then we get to Game and Tech YouTube, which is Down the Rabbit Hole. My friend Down the Rabbit Hole. He did a couple of videos. It was Thief in VR. Anybody who knows computer games, Thief was a big one. Sort of stealthy game in a sort of like medieval type environment where you had to really think about whether you could be seen in the light, so you were skulked around in the shadows and all of that. And apparently it's now gone to VR. I really do need to turn my VR headset on. I don't know if it's a PlayStation exclusive, but it's down here. I did charge the battery on it a week ago. Still haven't turned it on. It's been manic with my mum. So that was very interesting to watch. He was talking about some people's opinions on it and bugs and problems, which he couldn't see on some parts of it, but did see it on others. So it was quite good. And then he did an explanation and a sort of broadcast announcement that J.J. Abrams' Star Trek Kelvin timeline is dead. And I did read about this. I didn't see it on YouTube. That Paramount are moving on from that particular timeline. There's not going to be a fourth Star Trek film on that timeline. It's moved on. They're moving in other directions. So they talked about the fact that that sort of thing is sort of dead now. So that was interesting. But I mostly knew about that. But it was interesting to know his take because I know what a passionate person he is about Star Trek. So, yeah, it was interesting. So salute, my friend, and go over and subscribe to him if you can and like his videos. They're very, very, very sort of like different and mixed, and not all just about games or films and stuff. It goes into other areas like tasting and drink and all sorts of stuff. It's brilliant, really. Robert's Retro Gaming, we talked about him earlier on, and Canadian royalty as far as I'm concerned. Great at his games, loves playing them, loves showing them. So he did the Dwarf Fortress Classic episode. Is it episode 17? Wow, he's up to that. Or 19 could be even on that. Minecraft Play episode 172. God, he's getting up to blog numbers. Commodore 64 Wizard of War. So that's twice I saw Wizard of War. He liked Wizard of War, I think. And I noticed that there was a few differences on what he was playing to the one that I play. And I base that on all these different cracks and different versions that are out there. Now, historically, Wizard of War comes in two flavours for the Commodore 64. A very early one that was only on the Japanese market, and it was for not even the Commodore 64. It was the early Commodore 64 that was released in Japan that only had 4K of RAM, if I remember rightly. Everything was cartridge-based. And it was awful. And then there's the Commodore 64 version for international markets. And I remember I talked about in a blog that there was a YouTube video that said that Wizard of War was written on PET. It was written on the Commodore PET and transposed and compiled on the actual Commodore 64. So they were writing SID code and sprite graphic data on a PET. And PET doesn't have sprites, doesn't have a SID chip, sound chip. So it was all written and ported and compiled that way. And that's how apparently Commodore wrote a lot of early games. Weren't even written on the Commodore 64. They were written on PETs. So that opened my eyes. And from that point of view, that Wizard of War, the one that's good, the one that a lot of my friends like and enjoy and I play as well, wasn't even written on the machine it was intended for. So that's great. He played a SNES game called Kid Clown in Crazy Chase. I do like it because I shout at the screen, because he was going down the screen. I said, I don't understand why I'm dying here. I don't understand. There's this sort of like a fuse going down. There's a timeline. You've got to get to the bottom and kick the bomb off, or the fuse that's going down all the time will reach the bottom, blow up the bridge. That's the end of the game. You have to also jump to pick up things, and it's isometric. And you have to therefore observe the shadows. You have to be under the shadow and jump up, and you need to get certain symbols, 4 of them. They're like picture card symbols: spade, heart, diamond, that sort of thing. And if you didn't get them by you got to the end of the race, you died. And it was like he was running down these and avoiding them at first, going, I don't understand why I died there. Well, what do you mean I've got to do it again? Jesus. And I think he finally figured it out at the end. And it was just fun to watch. This is the sort of fun I get. Sorry, but I just find these things amusing. But he went back to his Atari 8-bit stuff, and he played Squish 'em, Flying Bombs, and Hide. Oh, Ho Helen Herbert, I think it's called. It was a platform game, if I remember rightly. All of those were interesting. I like looking at the Atari 8-bit games, especially when there's a comparison between a Commodore 64 one. In this particular instance, I don't remember playing Squish 'em or Flying Bombs on the Commodore 64, so I think they might have been not exclusives, or I'd never had them on the 64 and I just don't know of them. Steve's Gaming. So salute, my friend, and please go and have a little look, like, subscribe. Steve's Gaming Part 2, another person that I've said got great respect for, love his videos, especially when he dies a lot, which he does, is doing his advent calendar. He's done advent calendar 1 to 13, and he's probably done a 14th because today is the 14th. But I've seen 13 so far. Mixture of good, mixture of bad in regards to what he considers a good game, what he considers a bad game. I edge towards the bad ones because I like to see him suffer a little bit. But I equally like it when he plays a good one. I don't agree with some of the bad ones he chooses. He chose one the other day. Can't remember the title. It was an arcade game, I'm sure. I think of it. And he went, just hate playing this. And it was all to do with his view, you know. And he always expresses that. That's what I like about his channel. He always expresses, says, look, you're going to love this game, possibly. It's just not for me. I just find it bad for this, that, the other. Tries to play it, whatever. And then explains the good ones, which he says, I can't see anybody who not liking this game. It's absolutely fantastic. And I've looked at them and went, no, I wouldn't choose that as a good game. But that's the fun of watching something like this. And it's definitely working. It's so much better than having a snow-themed view on games because it's December. Do you know what I mean? This good, the bad, it's quite good. I like it. Steve's Gaming Part 2, please go and have a look. His link is in my description. And then we move to Colin Jones, aka Ponder, and I've mentioned it already, what a great guy and nice guy he is. I like his vlogs, I like his kerfuffles and shoot 'em up gamey type things. He did a couple of videos this week. He did a mystery gift unboxing, which I told you I'm dead jealous of, and everything Commodore 64 challenge Buggy Boy. So there's a C64 challenge called Everything C64. If you don't know about it, it's a challenge in there doing Buggy Boy. So they got to try and get a high score on that as much as possible. Brilliant. Seb's Place. He's done another video this week. A game. I can't read my own writing. See, I can't read my own writing. Oh, a game for couples, apparently, is what it was called. That's right. And the title was Bubble Bobble. And he went through the history of Bubble Bobble and went through the 8-bit version conversions, saying which one he thought was the best, gave it a point system, and talked about the development and how many times you have to play the game to get to the end, etc., etc. And there are 100 levels in that game. So playing that twice, it's almost like Ghosts and Goblins. So that was great. David's Retro Games Play Badly is a name that you've probably heard in the comments a couple of weeks ago and in the past. He did the greatest games in the last 25 years. Again, I don't really watch those types of ones, but he's a great mate and I watched it and I agreed with bits and not agree with others. What you consider to be your last 25 years of great gaming is, you know, different. I played probably more PC games than console games, but I can't deny Crazy Taxi and all that sort of stuff of having an importance and how fun and how brilliant those would have been at Christmas and all of that. I had that game on the Dreamcast, if I remember rightly, in the year 2000. I love that game. So yeah, greatest game though, don't know. But there we go. And then we've got definitely go and watch that. And his channel. Lovely guy. He's got a lovely sort of like cave of his stuff, you know, his games all on the shelves and monitors and games playing in the background and talking about what he's picked up this last month or year or whatever. Great stuff. Lastly, Mainmeister, he did an 8-bit kerfuffle on a game called The Avengers by Gremlin Graphics, which is not based on the TV series, not based on the comic book or anything like that. It's a sort of like a title for a Way of the Tiger book, I think. And I remember playing it and not finding it very interesting, to be quite honest, that game. I was probably playing more SNES stuff or getting close to playing SNES stuff. It was definitely that role-playing game, scroll around, go through this door, find a key, go through another door, top down or slightly isometric view. So that was interesting. And of course, sort of seeing less and less of Mainmeister, but that's generally because of time, but also because they're at the times that I'm doing stuff live as well. So a bit difficult, but I'll always go back and watch something that I've missed. Just haven't got around to it just yet because of my mother. And that's about it really for the text part, and we just get to the final just
showing you what's turned up. So I'll go to overhead cam, move these out the way. This came this week. This is the disc replacement program for my Doctor Who box sets. This is for season 18. There's only one disc in here. It just came like this. No note inside. I know that I'm missing not only the disc replacement program for 18 but also 20, and 20 is not there. So I've sent another email thanking them for my replacement for my season 18, but where's my season 20, or is that coming? So we'll see what happens there. A couple of steelbooks and a Conda. This arrived broken, had to send it back, got another one. This one is perfect look, but the first one was bent all here. It was bent up. Nice sort of like looking cover, quite nice. Film, not brilliant really, but this one was, I thought, interesting as a steel book, so I paid full price for that. The next two were on discount. Jarhead 20th anniversary. I did like this film when it came out. Haven't seen it since. Quite like war films, so I'm looking forward to reacting to this. And this one was a fave. This one I got full price. It was, I think, 22 quid. First time on 4K, as it says at the top. It's Catch Me If You Can. Tom Hanks, Leonardo DiCaprio. It is based on a true story. I really enjoyed it. Quite looking forward to watching this again. There were a lot of things learnt from that particular film. That particular story. And the guy that actually committed all the crimes, which is Leonardo DiCaprio, they hired him on how banks get swindled, in regards to signatures, printing of checks, all that sort of stuff, which brings us to the world we are in today. And that's the end. I hope you've enjoyed the blog. It's lasted a bit longer than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be incredibly short. But I'm pretty sure this week is going to be a weird week, one that I'm filled with trepidation on. I mentioned earlier on, even now stuff's going on in the house and it fills me with dread and upsets me that I'm by myself. But that could be because they know that I'm doing a blog and they don't want to disturb me and stuff. I don't know. But after arguments, it makes you second guess. And that's why arguments can be a bad thing. But from my personal perspective, my mother's in great hands. My sister's doing a great job. And I'm doing the best I can, and a little bit lonely, but living for a better day. And with that, I'm going to see you next week and try to be good, get that prepping done for Christmas, and I'll see you all soon. See you next week if you like watching this week by week. Bye-bye anyway. Salute.